Hello, I'm that Geeky Gamer, and welcome to my show. As you may have guessed, this show will be about video games, both bad and good, and everything related to video games. I will also talk about films and possibly other geek culture related stuff, but my main focus will be on the games, as I am, first and foremost, a gamer after all. Besides, this is my show, so I'll do whatever the hell I want. So, with the introduction out of the way, what should we start this show with? Well, a game, obviously, but which one? There are several candidates that come to mind, but I thought it would be good to start off with a game from one of my all-time favorite series, The Legend of Zelda. I really love these games. They are just so unbelievably good. They have great visuals, wonderful soundtracks, storylines that have gotten fairly epic over the years, and most important of all, they have fantastic gameplay. Having just recently finished the first game for the first time, I thought it would be a good idea to check out the sequel for this review, but I was a bit surprised to find out that not everybody loved this one. It seems that, in general, this game is considered to be somewhat of the black sheep of the series. But hey, it's still Zelda, right? I mean, how bad could it be? What the hell? What is this? This isn't Zelda! It's not even close! This is actually bad! But that's just impossible! I mean, this is supposed to be Zelda! Zelda! Zelda isn't bad! Ergo, this can't be Zelda! But somehow, it is! Well, I guess we better get this review started before I change my mind, so for those of you who still haven't figured it out, let's take a look at Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link. So yeah, contrary to what you might think, this is actually a pretty bad game. I guess some of the concepts and ideas are pretty decent, but the execution is just terrible. They decided to change just about everything from the previous game, and very few of those changes are actually any good. The first and most obvious of these changes is the perspective. In the original, you had an overhead style view that worked very well. In this game, however, you're presented with a side-scrolling perspective. At first glance, this doesn't seem so bad, and it actually isn't. However, when you stop and think about it, this does sort of limit the amount of exploring and adventuring you can undertake. I mean, there is some exploration to be had in the overworld map, but in the dungeons, you basically have two choices. Left or right. That's not much of an adventure in my book. Okay, so you do get to explore a bit more than that, what with the dungeons having several floors and locked doors and such, but it really does boil down to left or right, with a few steps of up and or down. Granted, that's not all that much different from the previous game, but it's just that with this perspective, it just feels much more restrictive, as you can only move in two directions. Anyway, this is just the very tip of the iceberg, so let's move on. To most people, it should become apparent very shortly after starting this game that they decided to go with more of an RPG style of gameplay. You now have to level up your attack power, your life or defense power, and your magic power. Now, I'll be the first to admit that I actually like this idea. I mean, I love RPGs, so why shouldn't I like it? Well, the thing is that this just does not work. What I mean is that although having to level up your stats is a neat idea, the way this system has been executed is just full of flaws. First of all, there are way too many enemies that don't give you any experience points whatsoever, and it's usually one of the bigger, more powerful enemies. To me, that just doesn't make sense. If you have to have any enemies that don't give you EXP, then why can't it be the minor, weaker ones? Secondly, when you gather enough EXP to level up, you're presented with a level up screen. Here you see your current attack, magic and life level, so you would think that you could choose which one to level up, right? Well, you'd be wrong. This screen ends up being fairly pointless, as you can usually only level up one of the stats each time you get enough points. Then why the hell couldn't the stats just automatically level up when you got enough EXP? This is just a pointless screen. Thirdly, the EXP points are next to useless. Okay, so they do of course give you more strength, defense and magic power, but the fact is that you still have to collect hearts and magic bottles to increase the amount of life and magic you have. In essence, this means that no matter how strong you get by getting EXP, you still only have a few blocks of life before you die unless you find the extra hearts, which is way easier said than done, by the way. You see, there are very few hints as to where you need to go to get the hearts, and maybe I just didn't get far enough, but there just doesn't seem to be enough extra hearts to find early on. I could actually only find one of them before I gave up playing. Yeah, I know, I could just look it up online, but I shouldn't have to. I mean, back when this was new, you couldn't do that anyway, so you had to go by word of mouth or find it on your own. In the original, I did occasionally have some problems finding the hearts, but not until I gotten fairly far in the game. Here, you only get one before you need help. That's just not enough! Oh, and before I forget, you remember that ridiculous and time-wasting level up screen I mentioned? There is actually another screen that is even more of a pointless waste. You see, while you're traveling on the overworld map, you will only encounter enemies if you're not on a road. As soon as you walk off a road and into a field or forest or something, an enemy can appear at any time, and if you touch them, you go into an action screen where you have to fight them. However, if you walk off the road and enemies appear, and you then start walking on the road, only to run into an enemy, you will go into a completely empty action screen. Why? What in the hell is this screen good for? There's absolutely no reason to include this in the game! What the hell kind of sense does this make anyway? Monsters can't walk on roads? Why the hell not? Actually, it's not even that, because they clearly can walk on the roads, but if you try to fight them, they disappear! What? Does fighting on the roads just make them pussies? I just don't get it! Why would anyone think that this was a good idea? It's just a complete waste of time, effort and gameplay. Speaking of gameplay, that's one of the major problems in this game. The gameplay sucks! I don't know what it is, but this game is just boring! I think this again has something to do with the fact that you mostly only go left or right. I mean, in the dungeons, you usually move to one side while the monsters constantly spew out and attack you. Maybe this doesn't sound all that boring, but just look at this for a moment. Yeah, this looks like a whirlwind of excitement, right? And if you think it's boring to look at, just try playing it. It's really, really dull. Why do the monsters have to spew out like this? And why do they always just take one fucking hit to kill? Okay, yeah, there are, thankfully, monsters that take a bit more to kill occasionally, but they in turn are just annoying. Sometimes they are just really difficult or near impossible to kill, but usually the problem is that the way to kill them is really tedious and annoying. Like this night fuck. He's nowhere near impossible to kill, but it's just that having to strike him where he isn't shielding himself while shielding yourself from his strikes is such a pain in the ass. You always end up taking a few hits, and sometimes this fuck can end up killing you, resulting in you having to start over from the beginning. And that's yet another thing. This game has a lives system! What the hell? Why would you go from a system with no lives and infinite continues to a system where you get 3 lives before you have to start over from the beginning? Oh, okay, it's not actually all that bad, as you don't really have to do everything over again after a game over, but you do have to start from the starting point of the game, and you lose all the EXP you might have gathered before dying. You don't lose your increased levels, items or magic powers, but it's a huge hassle having fought your way to a dungeon boss only to lose your last life and then having to travel all the way back to said dungeon, fight your way to the boss again, and then try again to defeat him, at which point you might only have 1 life left again. I really think the system from the previous game was much better, where you didn't have any lives, and when you died, you had to start over again either from the beginning of the dungeon, if you were in one, or from the start of the game. Granted, this sounds very similar, but the thing is that it usually took much more to die in the previous game. Which brings us to probably the biggest problem of this entire game. It's too fucking difficult! Yeah, I know, a game being difficult doesn't necessarily make it bad, and it might just be that I really suck. But I honestly believe that this game is way too difficult. As I said, maybe I just suck, but I do consider myself to be somewhat above the average in terms of gaming skills, so the average gamer should have even more trouble than me with this game. And based on what I've seen, that seems to be accurate. I just don't get why this game is so difficult. I mean, I occasionally had some trouble with the original as well, but nowhere near as much as with this one. And I don't remember the original game feeling too easy. I actually couldn't finish this game. Okay, so part of that was due to the fact that I just found it so damn boring, annoying and bad, but the difficulty definitely played a major part of it. Just what the hell happened here? Why did they change the formula for this game so drastically? I mean, did they get some feedback from the original that said people were hoping for more of a boring, difficult, annoying mess? I just don't understand. Who the hell was responsible for this crap? The only next to reasonable explanation I can think of is that some idiot saw the original and thought, yeah, that's pretty okay, but I think we have to make it more adult. Yes, this is really stupid, but that would kind of explain how this could happen. Just think about it. This game has an older Link, a somewhat darker storyline, it's much more difficult, and it even has Link getting laid. He even gets some action from the older generation as well. And I don't know what disgusting mind thought that up, but it's definitely not aimed at kids. Anyway, I guess they really were going for a game aimed at older gamers, but that's just stupid. It didn't need to be. I mean, I'm in my early 20s, and I still love Zelda. In fact, a lot of people who love Zelda are teenagers or young adults. It doesn't matter to them that these games are at least partially aimed at kids, because they're still great games with plenty of enjoyment to be had for gamers of all ages. Zelda 2, however, doesn't have any enjoyment for anyone. I can't believe how bad this game is, let alone that it's a Zelda game. The new features don't work, it's full of pointless and annoying crap, and it's just so utterly and extremely boring. Even the things that usually are very good in Zelda games are pretty bad. The graphics are bland, boring, and sometimes even painful to look at. The music, although not terrible, is definitely not on par with the rest of the series. And the overall sound quality is quite terrible. Oh, my ears! In addition, it can even be difficult to save this game. If you use an original NES version of the game, it can sometimes fuck up and fail to save your game properly, unless you're very careful and hold in the reset button as you turn off the power of the console. Well, I'm done with this crap now. I hope you enjoyed this, the first episode of my show, and I hope you'll check back every week for new episodes. Next week, I'll be discussing a certain film that several reviewers have already talked about, but I feel I should get my say as well. In fact, I might have a thing or two to point out to one particular reviewer. Who is that? What film am I talking about? Well, just check back next week and you'll find out all about it. Thanks for watching. Bye.